Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating take on the future of work, tech, and, well, what it actually means to be human in a highly automated world. We're going to be decoding some brilliant insights from a recent Forbes Japan article, which leans heavily on the work of AI visionary Amir Hussein and some seriously eye-opening findings from the Stanford AI white paper. Look, if you've been watching the news lately and feeling, kind of overwhelmed by how ridiculously fast AI is moving, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to break down exactly why the undeniable math of AI actually makes your unique human perspective more important, not less.
So let's just address the elephant in the room. That profound career anxiety pretty much everyone is feeling right now as AI accelerates. It's the massive existential question hanging over literally every industry, from healthcare to graphic design, right? If a machine can process billions of data points, spit out flawless text, and solve these insanely complex structural problems at speeds that totally eclipse the human brain, what's our actual worth? Are we all just sitting around waiting to be outpaced? It's a heavy question, but as we'll see from the source material, the answer isn't just reassuring, it is actually incredibly empowering.
Okay, Section 1, the AI speed myth. To really get to the bottom of our actual value, we've got to totally dismantle a misconception that's been hammered into us. For the past decade, the dominant narrative in tech has equated AI's value purely with processing speed, massive data centers, and raw compute power. You know the drill. We've been trained to think whoever has the fastest model, whoever crunches the numbers quickest, wins, period. But this assumption that intelligence and value scale on a straight line with speed, it's fundamentally flawed. Take a look at this quote. It's a hidden truth from the highly anticipated Stanford AI Index report, and it completely shatters that speed equals value myth. The true frontier isn't just automating tasks to do the exact same old things faster, like, writing a generic corporate email in 2 seconds instead of 10 minutes. No, the real frontier is the creation of entirely new knowledge. And creating new knowledge requires a fundamentally different approach than just hitting fast forward on a digital assembly line. Moving on to Section 2, exploring the ideaverse. So, to really grasp how AI creates this new knowledge, we need to visualize mathematically why that Stanford quote hits the nail on the head. We need to picture the actual landscape where AI operates. Amir Hussein, in his book The Sentient Machine, calls this landscape the ideaverse. Picture the ideaverse as a physical, high-dimensional, and practically infinite space. It literally contains all possible knowledge, all facts, every concept, and every conceivable combination of ideas. Think about trying to discover a new life-saving drug, right? Every time you combine two molecules, it branches out into millions of new, untested possibilities. And every single one of those branches has millions of its own branches. It's a space so vast, so incredibly dense with possibility, that it totally defies human imagination. Now, when we drop an AI into this infinite ideaverse, it moves at a superhuman speed that is honestly hard to wrap our heads around. It evaluates, recombines, and generates ideas on a scale we just can't match. Let's say an AI explores 1 trillion, 1 trillion ideas or parameters in the literal blink of an eye. It maps out this massive constellation of data before you can even finish a sip of your coffee. And when you hear numbers like that, it sounds like an insurmountable advantage, doesn't it? Like, how could we possibly compete with that kind of velocity? But wait, here is the absolute aha moment of this whole explainer. This is where the math actually works entirely in your favor. In a practically infinite space, exploring 1 trillion ideas or even 10 trillion ideas is still essentially zero. It is a mathematical drop in an endless, boundless ocean. Because the ideaverse is limitless, no matter how ridiculously fast a machine moves, it can only ever scrape the tiniest, most microscopic fraction of what's actually out there. Speed alone simply does not solve the fundamental problem of exploring infinity. Speed is just a local advantage. It basically means you can search your immediate surroundings really fast, but it does absolutely nothing to help you figure out which part of the infinite universe you should be standing in to begin with.
Which brings us to Section 3, power of starting points.
Let's think about it like this. Imagine you're exploring an infinite pitch-black cavern with a flashlight. It genuinely does not matter how fast you can run. What matters above all else is exactly where you are standing when you decide to flick that flashlight on. Because the space is infinite, the single most important factor dictating what an AI discovers is the exact coordinate system from which it starts its exploration. And here's the kicker. This coordinate system is made entirely of human elements. It's built from our initial assumptions, our prior premises, our unique perspectives, and yes, even our inherent personal biases. These aren't flaws. In an infinite mathematical space, these are the strictly required anchors that give the exploration any meaning at all. We as human beings are the ones setting those precise coordinates. First, the human defines the initial conditions. They walk into the dark cavern and point the flashlight in a very specific direction based on their own lived experience. Second, the human sets the objective structure. They adjust the beam width, they decide what exactly they're looking for. And then third, the AI takes off, exploring all the adjacent possibilities within that beam of light at warp speed. But, and this is absolutely crucial, it's doing so purely from that specific human origin point. Even slight differences in how a human frames the problem, how they set up the data, or exactly how they phrase the question, that entirely changes what the AI is even capable of seeing or generating.
All right, section 4, the new competitive advantage.
So, how does this abstract math of infinite spaces actually dictate the success of modern businesses today? Well, it cleanly contrasts two distinct approaches, automation versus generation. The old corporate paradigm treats AI like a pure automation machine, using it to write routine code a little quicker or sort spreadsheets a bit faster, all for those minor efficiency gains. That's essentially running the exact same race, just a little bit faster. But the companies that are truly breaking away, they're treating AI as a generation engine. Instead of just speeding up existing tasks, they're using their unique human expertise to point the AI into unseen corners of the ideaverse. Think of a company that stops trying to optimize a traditional supply chain and instead asks the AI to discover an entirely new, sustainable composite material that renders the old supply chain totally obsolete. That's not running faster. That's running an entirely different race. And notice how this exact dynamic scales all the way up. At the business level, a pure speed focus might keep the lights on through basic efficiency, sure, but a framing focus yields strategic design and real market-disrupting innovation. And this goes way beyond just companies. At the national level, countries that obsess solely over hoarding microchips and accumulating raw compute power, they're merely going to survive. The source material points out that the nations that will actually define the global future are the ones investing heavily in shaping their education and research ecosystems. They aren't just building faster servers, they're cultivating better human framers. They're literally training people to ask better questions and build better starting points to direct the machines. Finally, Section 5, the future human value. Let's bring this all directly back to you to completely reframe your personal competitive advantage in this new era. As machines totally master the speed of execution, your unique perspective and your individuality transform into your ultimate career moat. The shift in human advantage is moving drastically away from how fast you can execute a task. Instead, your real value lies in mastering problem framing. It's about asking superior, more creative questions. It's about approaching a problem from weird, unseen angles that no algorithm would ever randomly generate. Most importantly, it's about leveraging your unique personal biases. Your distinct background, your quirky hobbies, your specific lived experiences. These are the very coordinates that allow you to drop the AI into an unexplored corner of the ideaverse that literally nobody else could have found. What is just truly fascinating about all this is that this proof of human value, it isn't based on wishful thinking. It's not just some corporate motivational speak to make us feel better about the inevitable rise of intelligent machines. No, it's based on the hard, undeniable math of exploring infinite spaces. The human role is not shrinking in the face of artificial intelligence. Structurally and mathematically, your deeply flawed, highly specific, beautifully unique human perspective isn't just some nice-to-have addition. It is the strictly required foundation for AI to create any meaningful new knowledge whatsoever. So the next time you feel that wave of anxiety creeping in about how fast artificial intelligence is moving, I want you to remember that flashlight in the dark cavern. Remember that speed is entirely irrelevant if you don't know where to begin. Stop worrying about trying to outrun the machine in a race you were never built to win. Instead, start leaning into the exact things that make your perspective totally irreplaceable. Because the ultimate question of the AI era isn't how fast we can go. The real question is, in an infinite universe of ideas, where will you choose to start?